Imagine accepting a routine late-night ride, a quick fare, a friendly driver, a quiet passenger. 20 minutes later, nothing is routine. In August 2025, New Mexico woke up to a case that chilled riders and drivers alike. 45-year-old Uber driver Joseph Andrus never made it home. Police say his 18-year-old passenger later told detectives she chose him because he seemed like a good man and that she needed to let off steam. Tonight, we follow the final route, the choices, and the shockwave that followed. Was this preventable, or was it a storm that built in silence? Stay with me, because every mile matters, and the ending will stay with you long after the screen goes dark. The phone chimed, a soft green glow on the dashboard. One more ride, then coffee, then home. That was Joseph's deal with himself. He drove nights because they were steady, and because night work left his days open for school drop-offs, dentist calls, and soccer practice talks on the sidelines. He knew the city like a friend, the streets that smiled back, the blocks that frowned, the shortcuts the app never suggested. The pickup pin hovered near a quiet residential strip. Porch lights hummed. A figure waited by the curb, hood up, hands tucked in sleeves. Joseph rolled to a smooth stop, confirmed the name and destination, unlocked the back door. He did his usual ritual, air all right, any music, water in the door pocket if you need it. She asked for quiet. He nodded, no problem, and eased the sedan into the soft river of Central Avenue. Street light washed the windshield in amber, then let it go. Neon signs flickered over shuttered diners, night workers drifted in pairs, and the radio hummed a song too gentle for the hour. Joseph checked mirrors with a rhythm he barely noticed anymore. He thought of the weekend he was saving for a small cabin in the Sandias, a porch with wind that smelled like pine and sunbaked stone. He pictured his kids running the loop around the railing, laughing at a joke only they understood. He smiled, then reset his eyes to the road. Behind him, the passenger sat very still. Not sleeping, not scrolling, just present in a way silence sometimes is. The map suggested a faster route, a frontage road that trimmed 3 minutes. He signaled, merged, breathed. It was an ordinary choice on an ordinary night. She had repeated the sentence all afternoon. Like a dare, she kept whispering to herself, I'm going to do something. She was 18, old enough to sign her name on lines that bind, young enough to still be building a map of what feelings are and what to do with them. She did not have the words she needed, only pressure and noise. She selected the ride with a thumb press that felt too simple for what she planned to carry into the car. When the driver turned and asked about air and music, his politeness pressed against the hard edge she had sharpened for herself. Kindness complicates cruelty, and she felt it. She told herself not to look at the back of his head, not to think about the small drawing tucked in the visor pocket that she could just see in the mirror. She told herself not to imagine children's laughter as a reason to stop. The city slid by in long panes of dark and light. She adjusted the hood, adjusted her breathing, adjusted the story she was telling herself about power. The story said action would reset a clock that had been stuck for months. It said she needed something drastic, anything, to shatter a feeling she could not name. It said choosing a person who seemed good would make it cleaner, faster, less messy. The logic was broken, and she knew it, even as she held it closer. When she finally leaned closer to the front, her reflection found his eyes in the rearview. The connection was brief, a glance. Then the driver returned his attention to the lane. She felt the moment stretch, then snap. In her chest, silence thickened. The frontage road peeled away from the interstate, a quieter corridor lined with shuttered warehouses and the occasional street lamp. Joseph's turn signal clicked, a metronome for his comm. He kept his hands visible on the wheel, a habit he had learned from years of de-escalating other people's bad nights. He spoke softly, everybody good back there, and waited for a nod he could feel more than see. What happened next lasted less than a minute. The details would later be tallied in reports and court papers, time stamped, distances measured, phrases underlined. It would not make the minute feel different to anyone who had to live with it. The passenger leaned forward. Joseph slowed, eased onto the shoulder under a lamp for light and space, placed the car in park. He lifted his palms where the back seat could see, and he began to count a breath rhythm that had helped panicked riders in the past. In 2-3 out 2-3, a passing driver called in the strange scene. A rideshare pulled off where it did not belong. Blue and red arrived in their patient spiral. Officers approached with their hands open, speaking names and instructions. Afterward, the frontage road wore tape and cones and the small yellow markers that stand in for the things people cannot bear to repeat aloud. A camera blinked from its tripod. Radios murmured. Someone draped a blanket over a woman who looked emptied out by her own choices. Later that night, according to charging documents and initial police statements, detectives would note a sentence the young woman allegedly spoke. She chose him because he seemed like a good guy, and she needed to let off steam. The words did not fit the shape of the loss. They still do not. Interrogation rooms make time feel heavy. A metal table, a paper cup of water, a camera, eye in the corner, a wall of mirrored glass. The detective spoke in a voice built for long nights, steady and unhurried. He began with small questions. Tell me about your day. Where did you start? Where were you headed? The answers arrived in fragments at first, then in a line that moved forward, then backward, then forward again. The transcript would later capture phrases that traveled fast on social media, flat words that people used like puzzle pieces. Needed to do something, did not know why, let off steam. The detective did not argue with the words. He let them stand, and then he asked about the choice, why this driver, why tonight? She looked at her hands and said the part that quieted the room. Because he seemed kind. Elsewhere in the station, a victim advocate sat with Joseph's sister in a hallway that smelled like coffee and copier toner. The advocate spoke in the careful way people do when there is no fix, only presence. 1 hour at a time. That is how you lift something you cannot lift. The sister nodded, because nodding was all the body knew how to do with that much noise behind the eyes. By morning, the probable cause statement was filed. The city woke to headlines and morning show segments. Strangers argued about motives they did not understand, and drivers sent each other voice notes that said, "Be careful tonight. Text me between pickups. Trust your stomach." Grief moved faster than the day. The vigil started as a group text and became a crowd. A grocery store parking lot, a crate of candles, a microphone clipped to a portable speaker, faces lit by small flames. People told the kind of stories that make a person present again. The battery jump in winter, the granola bars in the glove box for whoever needed one. The way he waved when he merged, always grateful, always careful. On a folding table, marker pens bled into poster board. Your life mattered. Thank you for being kind. Drivers deserve to get home safe. A local official spoke briefly about safety and task forces. Plans are good, the sister said later. Follow through is better. Nearby, Joseph's kids stood shoulder to shoulder, coached by an aunt who squeezed their hands in time with her breathing. In 2-3 out 2-3. At school, the counselor pulled soft puppets from a bin and offered a room where crying did not need permission. At church, the pastor lit a candle and let the silence do most of the talking. In a rideshare group chat, someone suggested late-night buddy routes. 2 cars shadowing each other across the city. Another proposed a map of safer pull-off spots. Well-lit, camera-covered, fewer blind corners. The ideas piled up. The loss stayed the same size anyway. Joseph's sister found a file on his laptop labeled plans. Oil change by Friday, call mom. Balloon fiesta with the kids in October, cabin weekend. Bring extra hot chocolate. She printed the list and put it in a folder with his name. When sorrow tried to rewrite him as a person waiting to disappear, the list was proof that he had been building days. Courtrooms speak in numbers and names. The judge addressed the room with a voice that carried, neither cold nor sentimental. The prosecutor described a right every worker holds, the right to start a shift and come home. The defense spoke about a mind narrowed by pressure and poor judgment, not as excuse, but as context. The young woman stood and spoke in a voice that seemed to come from a long hallway. Sorry. I know sorry is late. I chose wrong. I cannot undo it. No one in the gallery mistook apology for repair. Sentencing turned chaos into arithmetic, years and months, conditions and custody. Outside, microphones waited. The family walked past without stopping, the sister saying only what was true. Justice is not a bridge back to him. Safety is everyone's job from here. At the rideshare office, a corkboard filled with proposals, camera coverage of pull-off areas, optional two-car pairing after midnight, faster panic pings that route two nearest drivers, direct line to a dispatcher who can stay on the phone through the last mile. Months later, under a sky that finally remembered how to be gentle, Joseph's son scored a goal on a Saturday morning field. He turned toward the sideline with his arms wide and did not break when a familiar shape in the crowd turned out to be only a jacket on a stranger. He tucked the moment away and ran back to midfield, breathing like his uncle had taught him. In 2, 3, out 2, 3. In a quiet library, the young woman learned a routine made of schedules and checklists. She shelved paperbacks and kept a journal that did not ask forgiveness, only honest sentences. Remorse is a practice, she wrote, not a place. And practice is what I have. In a church basement, drivers traded notes and phone numbers. Trust your instincts, yes, and also never be alone on a dark block if you can help it. And also, text me when you park. On the anniversary, the family drove to the little cabin he had circled in blue. Wind skimmed the pines. Cicadas stitched a sound that felt like summer. They lit a small fire and told stories that made his laugh return for a while. When the stars pushed through the dark, steady and sharp, they folded his printed plans back into the folder and promised to keep adding to it for him. Small items, simple joys, things that count as living. For more content like this, like and subscribe.